All right, everyone. Welcome once again, aloha, to one of our periodic updates that we've been hosting. I want to begin by sharing that I don't have all that much new to share, but I find it really important that I give an opportunity to share a little bit of what's going through my mind and maybe anything else that's new, give you an opportunity to ask questions, and if anything else bubbles up through the link that we sent out for questions, just so that we all remain informed through this process. We are living a very challenging time with this COVID-19. Last week, toward the end of the week, and I think it's in part because it hit me really close to Friday, that Friday we weren't going to be in, because I would have probably held a live discussion then. And so that's why I sent out that message via email. And it's one of the more difficult messages. I shared the financial impact and position that we are likely to be taking, only because I'd rather you hear it from me than from other sources, and so that you get a sense of what I may be aware of in some direction. But I also wanted to take pause for a second, only to say that a lot of what is being shared is information that's happening at the state level and not necessarily yet through the University of Hawaii. The direction that we're going to take is still not something that we've defined. There have been some rather scary conversations that I've heard through the grapevines, but not not in any of the conversations that I've been in. So we haven't really began figuring how we're going to be addressing any budgetary shortfalls, other than knowing that they're there, they will be there, and we're probably going to have to take some type of measure to address them. But the how, we don't have that yet. Now, let me share a couple of things. I wanted to take just a couple of moments to summarize where we are today. For those of you that are, constantly engaged, this may sound a little repetitive, but we are operating in a less than normal way. And so I'll share a little bit of what that means. Most of you are participating in some capacity in something that we're doing. So all spring 2020 classes did move to an online delivery. Initially, we had some classes that were given an exception. There are no longer any exceptions to the online delivery. We do have some courses that will have a short pause, and that there will be a physical component that will happen at a later time. But for right now, there is no physical or face-to-face instruction. We are attempting to do as much of the work that we need to do from home to promote social distancing and to reduce the likelihood that any of us or any of our students is infected with the virus. We know that the University of Hawaii has had some exposure to COVID-19. We don't know of anything that's happened or anyone that's tested positive from leeward, and so we want to keep it that way. So we are trying to do as much of the work that we do from home. Most non-instructional services are again operating in a less than typical way, but they are operating, and so we are offering, whether it be online sessions or by phone or by appointment, most if not all of our services, and that's really critical as we continue to evaluate how we will cope with any of the budgetary shortfalls that may come about. For those of you that are preparing for future terms, we know that for summer session 1, we are still going to be working in a distance capacity. We are not opening doors to face for summer session 1. And for summer session 2, we are operating on the on the idea that we're scheduling most of our classes in an online capacity, but at a later point in May, we're going to reevaluate depending on the circumstances of COVID-19. We may be able to come back on face-to-face in some instances. As of right now, our fall is scheduled as normal. But again, this is something that's evolving. We want to make sure that we recognize any potential enrollment challenges that we may face. And so keeping that in mind, it's possible that not all sections will meet, but we're hopeful that on the enrollment side, we're able to work intentionally and aggressively to get some of our enrollment up, because it's one of those avenues to bring in revenue to help support our shortfall. Registration is open. And so that's really important, because I think that we all have a role that we play as it relates to enrollment management. And if there's anything that we could do from our end to help support our current students continue on for both summer and fall, it definitely will help them, and it will help us in the long run. So registration is open for both summer and fall. The next thing that I wanted to share as a more recent thing, and I know there have been some communications about, and you'll be getting some more in the near future, is that there is and more or less like an interim policy that's going to come into effect as it relates to grading structures for the spring 2020, basically allowing us to give students the option of opting for credit, no credit, versus a grade that they may have earned. And this is in light of their possible challenges that they may be facing. And so keep that in mind. There's more to come. We don't know all of the details on process, but we know that that's something, there's been consultation. We've been part of that consultation. And so more to come on how it'll play itself out. There was a UH announced message that went out to both students and our faculty and staff. And so the cat's out of the bag. We just need to figure a way of operationalizing that model. And so the focus of today's meeting was really to address a little bit of the message that I sent out last week. And that really is centered around the current budgetary constraints or concerns that are happening for the state of Hawaii. Where, most of us know that the budget for the state of Hawaii is highly dependent on tourism. And with COVID-19, tourism is one of those first things that basically, we're out of at this point to prevent the continued spread of the virus. And so with that, the state is likely to well, not likely, it's going to take a pretty heavy budgetary hit. And as an entity of the state, our budget will be impacted. And so in response to this, the governor took an action to basically freeze certain types of expenditures in preparation for, for the future. And so the first things that were put under freeze were, of course, the non-essential travel, especially from state dollars, is not currently allowable. Contract renewals or new contracts for non-essential services is something that's also on a freeze. And then I think that the most critical one, I think that the one that most people are worried about, is that of backfilling or filling any budgeted full-time permanent positions. So there's more to it, and you could probably go back to the message that I sent around, that I sent out last week. But that's in a nutshell where we were last week and where we currently are still. That's not to say that these freezes are gonna last for a very long time. We just don't know that. I think that these actions were taken because we just don't know what the future will hold. If we are able to go back to normal at some point in the near future, then the budgetary hit is not as big. But if this perpetuates longer, we have to prepare ourselves. And so we got to be as frugal as possible. And so we're taking that stance, working diligently to ensure that we don't spend wherever it isn't necessary, because any monies that we push forward is money that's going to help us alleviate the shortfalls in the future. There's been no conversation on other than putting a hold on backfilling or filling any current vacancies. There's been no other discussion of any measures that will be taken to help support our current financial situation, which, by the way, for us is not as bad as others may be experiencing. Nonetheless, for our budget for next year, we're likely to take a pretty hefty cut. Again, no numbers have been thrown around. And so in the planning, for those of you that have any questions on what we can do or cannot do, we got a couple of questions on the link relative to overloads, relative to lecturers, relative to a whole bunch of instances that where we may be concerned about our capacity. We don't have any real details on what measures we will be taking. And in fact, and in the conversations that I'm in, those conversations are still not happening. But I think it's, again, because we don't know, there isn't an end that we are seeing in the immediate future. So it's difficult for us to plan not knowing how much longer this is going to go for. So I wanted to say that myself and not to have everyone more or less evaluate my email. There is no hidden message in there. I'm just providing as much detail as I currently have with the intent of keeping you informed. Now, this is needless to say for those of us that, whether we're new to Hawaii, have been here for a long time, that are new in higher ed or have been in higher ed for a long time. This is truly unprecedented. And it represents the biggest economic hardship that we've probably lived and hopefully will live. And so with that being said, we got to try to, wherever and whenever possible, turn it a little bit positive. And I try to skim through the news and skim through all of the rumors to get a sense of when we can feel a little bit positive or begin to see some light at the end of the tunnel. And the indicators that I look at are whether we are truly flattening that infectious curve, what's happening within healthcare, and other indicators. And I hope that you have noticed that some of the places that have gotten impacted incredibly in a very, very difficult way, like New York, for example, where, as many of you know, my family is in New York. My wife's family is in New York. They're living through some really difficult days. But what I appreciate of what I'm seeing now is that the number of reported new COVID-19 patients is beginning to decline, or at the very least plateau. It seems like in the most recent days, we've seen that peak. And so hopefully we'll begin to see more of that decline as it relates to any of the health challenges and deaths that are caused by COVID-19. And so I'm trying to see that positive from there, because it allows us to begin reflecting on how long we're probably going to have to deal with it. For what it's worth, I think that, Hawaii is probably, managed the situation in some capacity that's not put us in the highlight of where, a lot of infections are happening very rapid, but we are still impacted by it. So in remaining positive, not just looking at the flattening of the curve, we could also see that there have been some supports that have recently come about. You may have read this from the media or other sources. The federal government enacted the CARES Act with a stimulus of support for a lot of industries, one of which is higher education. And one of the supports that we got is some funding that we're going to begin pulling to help support our existing students in any expenses that may be relevant to them completing their work for their educational goals. And there is some of that money that can be used to help address some of the challenges that COVID-19 has brought on Leeward and the University of Hawaii. The extent to which we have gotten support from the federal government is in the avenue of $2 million, of which at least half of that is going to go for direct student support. The other funding is something that UH and the UH community colleges are going to try to work together and see where we could best place those dollars to have the best impact moving forward. And so As we continue getting more of a sense of how all of this evolves, I'll try to continue keeping engaged with you and providing as many updates as I can. The challenge, as I said it from the very first time we had one of these Zoom meetings, is that much of this is changing pretty frequently. And so what I say today may change tomorrow. I'll try to keep us abreast of what's happening there. There are many questions, and like you guys have been sending them our way, I'm not trying to beat around the bush and not answer them. I don't have answers for everything, but there are questions revolving related to a lot of faculty functions, as well as contract renewals, a tenure and promotion. And what I can tell you is that a lot of these conversations are happening with consultation with UPA. I'm not part of those immediate meetings. I get briefed every now and then, but not likely until there are decisions and or recommendations. And so I can't speak right now to what's happening by tightening our budgetary belts. I don't know what actions we will be taking. I don't know whether major allowances will be made for the tenure and promotion processes. I know that there are conversations about them, but I'm not, I don't have any true updates at this point. We have been trying to keep these brief, one, and two, not as frequent because then it becomes very repetitive. Today, because I'm managing the conversation, is going to be pretty weird and interesting on how I could answer some questions. But what I will share is that because I don't have that very many new things to share, and I may not have answers for you, I'm going to direct you again to the link where we could submit questions so that we could continue updating our question and answers page. I will continue having these periodic meetings. So as I get more of those questions, eventually I will share them in a live meeting. I can't tell you how supported I feel by the fact that we are 20 some minutes into this meeting and I'm still getting a lot of people trying to join the call. There are over 100 people on the call. I had told my team the moment that I see a decline in the number of participants is the moment that I'm probably going to pull the plug on the live meetings. But the reality is that they seem to be working. I'll continue engaging whenever possible. And all that I can ask at this point, and what I shared with my team, and I'm grateful for everyone that I have because we're looking for suggestions and opportunities. All that I can ask is that if there's anything that we could push off or delay, especially if it's tied to expenses, that we should, only because it's really going to help the bottom line. That being said, the community colleges have an incredible function, especially in these times. We are a gateway for our students. We are a gateway for our community to help see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm hopeful that you share that mission with me, and that we find a way of really engaging. I know that with social distancing, it's really difficult. And I'm going to pitch for something that I heard in the news earlier today. I heard that it happens in New York. There is a time of the late afternoon, I want to say maybe 6 p.m. Don't take it from me. Maybe information is available, where we are showing and demonstrating support for our healthcare providers and first responders and those that have jobs that are essential and that are coming to work daily and that are putting their lives at risk of potential COVID-19 infection because of the type of work that they do. And so evidently at some point, whether it's 6 or 7 p.m., people are going to go out and make some noise to demonstrate support. I think that, being in the Aloha state, it should really be in our blood. And I'm gonna go out with my kids and I want to make some noise. Only because I know that a lot of people are working really hard to make things happen. And it's our mission. I've been saying this whenever I have an opportunity. If there's any budgetary cuts, I would hope that the community colleges are able to have some allowances, because we are going to be where the underemployed and the unemployed come to. The Wood right now is thinking very creatively on how to address some of the immediate needs. And so it takes investments to get us to do that, and we are poised for it. But it takes all of us as a community to get to push forward. And so I'm hopeful that in your capacity, you are able to continue promoting our WIG. We want to help our students carry on and enroll and maintain that positive trend toward their educational goals. Summer and fall are open. Remind your students to register. This is the time, in these quarantine periods with curfews, nothing better to do than to take a couple of credits online. And so it may seem selfish for me to be asking of this, but it is absolutely one of those big things that we could be doing that will not only serve us as a college, but it will serve our community as they prepare for, those better days to come. And so we're going to ride this wave, and no one better than the community colleges to help support our communities and them. And so just continue. Eileen, thank you for that. Gratitude for everyone that's really putting their lives on the line, and let's just think collectively and creatively on how we could ride this wave and do some good with it. And so with that, I'm going to stop because I'm probably going to cry soon. But thank you all for your continuous support. I know that this was not one of those instances where I was taking questions. It's just pretty impossible to manage letting every single participant into the room while sharing some updates. But keep up the work. Let's keep informed. And I really look forward to coming back to a more normal day in the near future. And so with that, if you do have any questions, what I'm going to ask, and Kathleen, I know I could see you. I'm going to ask Kathleen to send just a quick message again with the link for the questions so that I could continue answering them. But thank you guys so much. I'm going to stop the recording, and I really appreciate what everyone has been doing, and I look forward to better days. But again, thank you, and I'll keep you guys informed. I'll keep doing these. I see they're popular. You should like me on Twitter or something. I have more followers here than on Twitter. Just saying.